Hi everyone, my name is Herkeph and welcome back to my incredibly stupid, hardcore world where I am only allowed to use wooden tools and leather armor. In last week's episode, we managed to make quite a lot of progress on our new base. However, it is still far from being done. So in today's episode, our main objective is to actually make our base somewhat habitable and have it not look like the home of an absolute psychopath. So my next step was to actually decide what I want to have available in my base. So I wrote a few signs so that we at least have some clue of what we're supposed to be doing. My plan for this base is to have a bunch of farms feed into a central storage that will be located inside of the center platform. That's also where I intend to keep my villagers once we have that set up. So that was the first area that I wanted to make look somewhat decent. And just to keep things on brand, I've decided to keep making my life significantly harder than it needs to be. That's why I decided to use quartz to decorate the inside of the central platform. And like most of you would probably have guessed, I had, once again, severely underestimated how much building materials that I'd need for this project. But this time, we ran out of quartz, so I decided to go AFK at my bartering farm. But I then remembered that I have the patience of a hungry toddler and decided to go and mine quartz in the actual nether instead. But even though I had Fortune 3 on my pickaxes, the process was still painfully slow. So slow in fact, that I got distracted by a bastion, even though there's nothing useful that I could possibly have found there. But nonetheless, I then got back to mining quartz. And after having spent an excruciatingly long time in the nether, I finally got back to the overworld with slightly less than a shulker of quartz blocks. So I then got back to placing said hard-earned quartz blocks in the form of pillars. However, in order to actually progress with my base, I'm going to need a much better way of smelting stuff, as I have been using a very peasant-like setup for a very long time. So I decided to take a break from building the interior to build a super smelter. However, even though I have built many super smelters in the past, my highly limited IQ still made me manage to mess up building this one. So I had to tear it all down and build it once more. However, this time, I actually managed to build it correctly. I then got back to decorating the interior of the platform and decided to incorporate some cherry wood, as we had already used a lot of pink in our base. And since I was significantly too lazy to go for yet another quartz mining session, I decided to go FK at my bartering farm overnight instead. But unfortunately, we only managed to get about half of a shulker of quartz blocks, which was rather disappointing. So I now understand how my dad feels when I tell him I made yet another Minecraft video, but nevertheless, I started decorating our interior once again. I then decided that we were going to place our nether portal in the middle of the platform, so I decorated that as well. And once that was more or less done, I thought it might be a good idea to also deal with the interior of the actual base, as I intend to spend a substantial amount of time there. And at the time, the bottom part of my base was completely empty, so I decided to put in a floor and fix the walls on the interior. I then started building a staircase in the middle of the building, so that we actually have a way of getting up and down in our base. And for some reason, I decided to use spruce to make the staircase. I'm not entirely sure why I decided to do that, since it doesn't look particularly futuristic, so I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep the stairs as they are. I say that, but I'm a very lazy young man, so the probability of me actually going back to fix it is rather low. But we do have stairs now, which are actually functional, so it's at least something. I then went back to one of the donuts that I had built for my base and found an almost full shulker of smooth quartz that I thought I had lost forever. But at this point, I had already spent a bunch of time getting more quartz, so I felt like I had been ripped off. However, I did find a use for the smooth quartz immediately, as I started putting in a floor for the donuts, so that I can actually access them in case I want to do something with them in the future. I then installed water elevators, so that I actually have a way to access the higher floors in my incredibly vertical base. And to get down, I decided to use powdered snow with carpets on top, so I don't take any unnecessary fall damage. And when I was out exploring to find powdered snow, I ran into a pillager outpost. But this one had 8 carved pumpkins, which I very happily stole. Finding the powdered snow wasn't too difficult, so I grabbed some from a mountain that I found and placed it in by my water elevator. I was then getting rather annoyed by all the mobs that were making noise on my roof, so I decided to cover my entire roof with carpets to prevent the hoodlums from partying on my property. I then got on to checking things off from the list that we wrote at the start of the episode. See, I actually didn't forget about the list. Anyways, the next thing I wanted to check off the list was a mob farm. And now you might be wondering why I'm building yet another mob farm when I already built one a couple episodes ago. And the answer to that is rather simple. Because I'm a very silly and dumb young man, but regardless, I started constructing the new mob farm. But now that the mob farm is complete, we are going to have to cover it up, as it is looking very ugly at the moment. So I once again got back to the incredibly fun and engaging task of gathering the materials for white concrete as well as sand terracotta. I then got to work covering up our ugly mob farm. I apologize, but it appears that the Minecraft gods have decided that I should consume excrement, as the last part of the time-lapse got corrupted. But now that we have the mob farm as well as the tower to cover it up, it's looking rather weird that we don't have towers for our other platforms as well. So I decided to build the same tower on all other sides to make everything symmetrical. I was then about to end the episode, but I realized that I had completely forgotten to actually make a storage system for all of our mob drops from our farm, so I flew off to collect some wood for some more chests and went on to build the storage. So to actually transport all of the items from our mob farm to our storage, we have two options. Either we run a hopper line straight from our mob farm to our storage, or we can use water streams, which would save us a bunch of iron. Since I'm a very cheap man, I decided to go for the second option. However, this meant that we are going to need ice, so that the items don't get stuck. So I flew off once again to try to find a frozen ocean where we could collect some ice. I then went on to explore for tens of thousands of blocks until I finally found a frozen ocean with bits of blue ice. So I gathered up as much as I could with the pickaxes I have and started flying back. And after flying about halfway back to my base, I came across another frozen ocean meaning I had flown for several thousands of blocks for absolutely no reason. However, I did make it back to my base and put in the transportation system for our items. But that's all the time we have for this week, so there we have it, the 7th episode of our incredibly stupid hardcore world. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.